Good evening, everybody. We are having early announcements today, so please pay attention. As we are preparing to celebrate our 50th year anniversary and continuing to educate generations and build futures for the month of March, we will share facts about our school on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Did you know that in 1970, Carlos Rosario established FEDA, the Program of English Instruction for Latin Americans? If you would like to practice speaking English with your friends, you can join the SG Library Virtual Conversation Circle tomorrow at 5 p.m. Zoom links are on the virtual program will be posted on Library School Day and Remind pages. Now, this announcement is for all the classes who will be participating upstairs in the cafeteria with all the candidates that are here to talk about different things about the District of Columbia. So, the classes who will be participating, you can please go up to the cafeteria now to be on time to start at 6:15. Ruby's level 5 class, Miss Mary's level 6 class, Andrew and Mr. Ben's level 8 classes, Chris Ladd's advanced English class, Miss Barbara's GED class, and Miss Janet's IC3 class. Again, the classes who will be participating in the events upstairs in the cafeteria. Miss Ruby's level 5's class, Miss Mary's level 6 class, Mr. Andrew and Mr. Ben's level 8 classes, Mr. Chris advanced English class, Miss Barbara's GED class, Mary's IC3 class. We are expecting you in the cafeteria to start the event. These are all utilizing efforts. Everybody enjoy the rest of the evening.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right on. That's totally fair. It does feel a little kind of like you're going to just get what to do. It's always awesome to hear what guys do from this and doing that. Like, oh, yeah, oh, a couple of people orientation. I was like, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's so that's something yeah, it's um, yeah, we're I can go there for I got an email from I can forward it to you and then we have like a sign up form or like yeah. Or is it? Yeah, this Saturday we're at the Grayson South Park Center. Sunday we're at the Shepherd Park Community Center. And that one's being
Okay, this is a test. This is a test of the microphone, both for the room and the live stream. This is a test. Thank you.
oh yeah, did that voice. Yeah, that'd be a good voice, yeah.
For those of you in the live stream, people are going to start taking their seats shortly, and we will be starting at 6:30 p.m.
Yeah, that's chances said that one earlier we could that's a lot. Yeah, they do land road. The whole thing is like our first part is yeah. They will bring coffee or but they offered it up and like the press needed, it's like all the all right, fine. He said we're gonna be able to make the teachers show at like 5 a.m. Swear I was going towards the other and like show the school and stuff. And we called this up and the first yeah, it's really embarrassing. The second one, he did show up, but Edison was over there. Edison showed up. Yeah, exactly. So I was pretty shocked. Yeah, like over there and some of the staff. It was like cool. And then like I did show up, but they were like, "That's not good." Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they were like, "I was pretty shocked." Yeah, they were really there and some staff right after that. I did show up, but yeah, so they were like, "That's not good." All the clubs that you know, that job over there, like the double of that. So now we're part of the whole reason behind that is because he refuses to like be like out of school with us. We're like, yeah, we're teachers, like we're hard to get in school. Just like lawyers, you get in school or whatever. Like, yeah, the whole bit. More compromise.
Sorry about the text box. As you can see,
Yeah, so a lot of pressure is coming down on them. We've been very negotiating. It's really very exciting.
yeah, because you know,
Should have done this. Here we are. More pressure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. I've been in charge of like yeah, that's all. No one else can do it. Yeah, let me tell you, I think number one, I didn't get the shoes. So, I mean, I don't know what to do. She didn't tell me. That's fine. So, she's not like, she was fine. I was like, okay, so and then I just got I gotta, yeah, because like, otherwise it's like, I don't say. Like AI will be and then, worst part is getting so the old thing with Charles, so he realized it's not, I'm not very for poker, it's not, Charles is like, not having, like, support. where it hasn't it's really, really something wrong. And so when I saw on the Six Brothers, they messaged me, I was like, hey, Brothers. I just thought I think I explained why it's good. I grabbed it. I said, he's great. Randy was great. Hail that our treasure and first people start like, oh, like, this is great. Oh, it's supported. They follow the process. That's like I do. Even the real world is what we should do. I don't know what's wrong with that, but we just don't have the time. Who are dependent. So, like, it's just a couple things I get really like. You're just going to do your sleep stuff in the body that it took. Yeah, yeah. Oh, you make your edits and send it to me, and I'll add my signature. I was like, please, right now, you can draw on the phone. And, you know, you can just edit it right away. Send it over. That's a cool thing. Add a signature to set up over that. Add a signature. And a couple of calls today. Follow up with the morning, but here's that night, or you know, I'm like, why don't you say something? That's why you other guy did it won't open. I'll see you a few hours. Oh,
We'll be starting in 2 minutes. If you could please take your seats. One minute, please take your seats at this time. If folks could please silence their phones. Folks in the back, please take your seats. Good evening, welcome everyone, bienvenidos. I am Jose Barrios, I'm the president of the DC Latino Caucus, and I want to thank everyone for coming to this forum to hear candidates running in the DC Democratic primary talk about issues important to Latinos and immigrant communities. We're going to begin our program with some remarks from the CEO of Carlos Rosario, Allison Kaporos.
Good evening. Good evening. I can use my t-shirt voice, but let me turn this on. Test, test, there we go. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
How are you tonight?
Good.
You excited?
Sure.
Good, good. Well, I'm excited. I want to give everyone a warm welcome to our beloved school, the Carlos Rosario School. We serve 2,200 adult learners at 2 campuses. And our mission is to serve and to welcome those who are new to this country and make Washington, D.C. their home and are ready to go beyond survival into thriving and careers and contributing. And we do that through English as a second language training, career certification training, and comprehensive supportive services with a lot of love and respect. Our students who are here are phenomenal. They are the future. And I look forward, students, hi students, Here's a round of applause for your determination and your dedication and your care about Washington, D.C., and that's why you're here. And you've put together your questions for the candidates who are running for election in D.C. because you care about D.C. and you care about your neighborhoods, and your questions are outstanding. And students, I see in the future a city council representative from the Carlos Rosario School. What do you think? In the future, we're going there. See yourselves up here, all right, as you're listening tonight. So our schools serve students from 60 different countries who speak 40 different languages. It's like a mini United Nations here at our school. And yes. And part of our mission and the work that our school does is just this. That it's, yes, learning English, yes, preparing to have your high school diploma, yes, preparing to have your career certification in nursing or in culinary arts or in IT or in education, and it's learning how government works in DC and in this country. And that is woven through the educational experience at our school, and we've increased over the years the civic education for our students, including having the DC Board of Elections come to our school and show the voting booth and how it works, supporting students to each see whether they are citizens and ready to vote now or not. This is something that we did before. What ward do you live in? And now, with the DC Voting Rights Act, many, many more of our students are able to vote in local elections. And eager and ready to do that. So this is a thrill as part of our educational program to host and collaborate with the DC Latino Caucus and to welcome all of you here. I would be remiss if I didn't take privilege to share something with all of you. Our school is celebrating 50 years this year. 50 years of being in the community, serving the community, providing highly effective training and education and supports. And we have 80,000 graduates from Carlos Rosario who today are all around the region as business owners, as community leaders, as nurses, as doctors, as homeowners. 80,000 graduates. And so we're celebrating our school's birthday this year, and I invite everybody to come join us. We're celebrating on May 2nd, and we're selling tickets now for our gala event. And so I think back in the back, we have information about our gala if you want to learn more about that, if you'd like to support. And then also, drop your business card in the little bin over here, because we are selling Carlos Rosario swag. You can get a hat, a shirt, and all of this is going towards our scholarship fund to help students go on to higher education, because there are not resources in place for adult learners to go on to higher education. But through these funds, we get the resources and help our graduates go to higher education. So put your business card over there so that you might be in the raffle for some Carlos Rosario swag that you can wear around the community. I'm so proud of our team. I'd like to acknowledge the principal of this campus. Where's Eleni? Eleni Lawrence, who you'll be hearing from towards the end, but she and the Carlos Rosario team helped prepare and equip our students to really make the most of this forum and also be prepared for the primary elections and for them to exercise their rights. Will all of the Carlos Rosario staff members please stand up? Be recognized. This is the best team on the planet. Thank you, team. Grateful to you. And now I'm going to hand it over to our friends at the DC Latino Caucus to lead this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. First, I wanted to thank our gracious hosts here at Carlos Rosario, including Allison, the CEO, as well as Alani, the principal of the campus. And we are very excited to be partnering together to bring this important educational event to Carlos Rosario students, DC Latino Caucus members, and the wider public watching on the live stream. I also want to thank the candidates who have taken the time out of your very busy election schedules to join us tonight. Before we start, let me introduce the other individuals helping to run this forum that are at the table here. To my immediate right is Margie Yeager. These are all board members of the Latino Caucus. Margie Yeager will be serving as our timekeeper tonight. Jacqueline Castañeda is the vice president of the DC Latino Caucus. Dieter Morales is a member of our board and also serves as the chair of ANC 1A. I also wanted to acknowledge Edward Crystal, who is doing our live stream here on the right hand to you. So we are proud to be putting together this forum for the purpose of supporting all the individuals we've talked about, students and immigrants, non-citizens, and Latinos, to learn about engaging with our local government. Many of you will be voting in DC elections for the first time this June. And tonight, you will get to hear from candidates that are seeking your support. If you want to learn more about these candidates beyond what you hear tonight, please visit our website, www.dclatinocaucus.org, where they have filled out a questionnaire on Latino issues, but many of these issues also apply directly to immigrants and non-citizens as well. I did want to make a brief note. This is an educational forum. There will be no voting or endorsing that takes place tonight, no politicking or campaign signs. And for DC Latino Caucus members, any additional process begins online starting tomorrow, so please be on the lookout for that. For all of us here, I'm pretty sure that we've never had a forum quite like this one in the District of Columbia before. In 2022, the DC Council passed the Local Resident Voting Rights Amendment Act, which granted non-citizens the right to vote in local elections for the first time. That legislation, long championed by the DC Latino Caucus, is now the law of the city. Anyone who is a non-citizen, whether a permanent resident, a green card or other visa holder, or undocumented person who has resided in the District of Columbia for 30 days or more may register to vote. In June, registered non-citizens get to vote for the candidates present before us for the first time. And as you can see on this slide, if you are a non-citizen, you will be able to vote for local offices, including the council. You can also vote for mayor and attorney general, although they are not on the ballot in this cycle, so you will not see them. You also get to vote for the State Board of Education, advisory neighborhood commissioners, as well as participate in referendums, initiatives, and recalls. So you get to participate in the civic life of our city. But non-citizens must also know that you cannot vote for federal offices. That includes the offices of President of the United States, the U.S. delegate for DC, the U.S. representative or U.S. senator that we call shadow. Nevertheless, we have candidates running for some of those federal offices here tonight so that you can hear how they are fighting for DC rights in Congress, including making the district the 51st state and why statehood should matter to you. To the candidates, I want to say this. I know that you must be brief in your comments tonight because of our very tight agenda. But please understand that for some people in this room, this is the very first time that they are hearing from a U.S. politician. So your words really, really matter and will be long remembered. It was also really important for us to have you here so that you can see the faces of a new and rising constituency in the District of Columbia, whose needs you will have to address, in addition to the many other issues on your plate if you are elected to public office. Additionally, we wanted you to witness the value that an institution like Carlos Rosario has in helping to teach these students to become leaders and productive members of our city, and why it's so important for our communities and local government to support institutions like this school. And with that, I would like to turn to the rules for the evening. The forum will proceed race by race. We will begin with the Ward 7 candidates, and we will conclude with the DC Shadow Representative. For each race, I will call the names of candidates in alphabetical order. Any candidate, we're going to be a little flexible on this because there's a couple of special cases, but any candidates not present, by the time all candidates have gone for that race, we're going to have to move on. It's going to be very difficult for us to go back. There's a couple of individuals who are currently holding public office who are making their very, very best to get here as quickly as possible. And since they are public officials, including, all of the offices that are out there, there's a couple of individuals, if they arrive late, we will allow them to speak, even if it's not the term, in deference to their public service. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to speak on this question. Why are you the best candidate for immigrants, Latinos, and non-citizens in your race? After all candidates in the race have spoken on that question for 2 minutes, a Carlos Rosario student will be asking a question to you, to all the candidates. I, as the moderator, also reserve the right to ask a question. And in each such case, every candidate in that race will have 1 minute to respond to the question. Our timekeeper, Ms. Yeager, will inform the candidate when their speaking time has expired. We do ask that you please respect the timekeeper so that we can adhere to our agenda. And lastly, we ask that you please maintain civility. We ask that you focus on yourself and your positive contributions as a candidate and as a public office holder, rather than attacking your opponents. Students, we are live streaming this forum. You can see the camera here in the front, so please do stay out of the view of the camera. We do have it fixed in this direction, so that should not be an issue. Lastly, I wanted to show you a map of the district divided by the wards. There are 8 wards in the city. Tonight, we're going to be hearing from candidates for wards 7, 8, and 4, as well as those running for an at-large seat, which represents the entire city. So just to make sure that everybody gets a clear view of this, and we're going to be starting with Ward 7, and then we're going to move to Ward 8, southeast corner of the map. So first,
there's something going on back there.
as I said, we're going to begin with Ward 7. Mr. Evan Allen is going to kick off the proceedings.
Okay.
Every candidate, please step up to the podium like you just did, and you have 2 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to thank the Latino Caucus for having me. I want to give a shout out to my wife and my 3 sons who are watching this forum publicly at home. My name is Evan A. Allen, and I wanted to become the next Ward 7 DC councilman. I believe that I'm the best councilman for Latinos, non-citizens, and immigrants because I understand what these families and these 3 communities are dealing with on a daily basis. I stand on 3 pillars: public safety, economic development, and education. It's very, very important in regards to public safety that our Latino communities feel safe, and we want to work with the Metropolitan Police Department. I want to bring a youth Latino task force to address some of the issues within the Latino communities, and also be able to listen and have violent intervention programs for the Latino communities. In regards to education, I want to bring to DC Public Schools academic support, and also be able to bring mental health services to these families, reminder services in the DC Public Schools. And then when you talk about economic development, I would like to bring equity as far as education, business, small business empowerment. That's very, very important for the Latino communities. I think of all of these 3 entities will make me the best candidate to become the next Ward 7 DC councilman. Thank you.
Thank you. Villarreal Johnson.
Good evening. Good evening. Here we go. My name is Valario B.J. Johnson. I am a candidate for the Ward 7 DC Democratic seat. I am the best candidate because civil and human rights are above all things. We are all humans, and we all have to maintain what we all idealize about America. It's a dream, a promise, that if you work hard, that you can have what is promised to you, that you can earn. One thing I understand about what happens and can happen is that because some of us get taken advantage of because we have issues. We have labor access issues. We have immigration issues. We have all kinds of things pressing us. But we need laws and we need people that will fight to make sure all residents of the District of Columbia are treated equally. You can guarantee 3 things from my office. I'll be engaging, I will be responsive, and I'll be accountable. And if you call me, you call the office, you will get a response, you will get action, and I guarantee that no one in this room will be harmed without consequence. And that's the kind of leader and fight that you'll have coming from the Ward 7 seat. I represent the whole District of Columbia, but I stand on Ward 7. Thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing us to be here. I'll see you in the room later. All right.
Ms. Ebony Payne.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to the DC Latino Caucus and Carlos Rosario School for having me here today. My name is Ebony Payne, and I'm a third-generation Washingtonian who grew up in Ward 7. While my father has deep roots in DC, I am also a descendant of immigrants through my mother's family who immigrated to the US from Syria and Lebanon, seeking a better chance for their children. I stand here before you today as a result of their courage. I am running for Ward 7 DC Council because it is time for change and new leadership in DC government. I, like so many Washingtonians, am deeply concerned about the rise in crime and violence, particularly amongst our youth who are in desperate need of our support and intervention. We all deserve to live in a safe and vibrant community, and I am in a unique position to be able to fight for the rights of the Latino community in our city. My family is a leading advocate for immigrant rights and elevating Latino voices in politics, not only in DC, but nationwide. That is why I am so honored to have the endorsements of over 15 Congressional Hispanic Caucus members, including Linda Sanchez, who lives in Ward 7, and the CHC chairwoman, Nanette Barragon. The rest of the candidates here today will tell you of their promises to your community. I want to highlight my amazing team who is already leading the effort to ensure Latinos are a part of the Ward 7 race. Luis, a former DACA recipient who immigrated here from Mexico, is my amazing photographer and produces all of my campaign's mail, which has shown up in thousands of Ward 7 mailboxes. Daisy, an immigrant from El Salvador, still working under TPS, sends all of my campaign's emails and text messages. And our many paid canvassers, many of whom are first-generation Americans with families from all over Latin America. It is important to not just talk about what you promised to do, but to show a proven track record. When I am elected, I will have the strongest ability to be your biggest champion. I would be honored to have your endorsement. Thank you.
And I apologize if I mess up anybody's name. Yes, please correct me. Veda Rashid.
It's Veda Rashid.
Thank you.
Buenos noches a todos. It is a great pleasure to be here today before the DC Latino Caucus. My name is Veda Rashid. I'm a native Washingtonian. I was raised right in Ward 7, educated in Ward 7, raising my family in Ward 7. Like many of you in this room, I did not have a traditional path. I knew I wanted to go to law school because I knew I wanted to create a way for my family. I got involved in politics when my kids were sitting in their classroom in pre-K and a bullet shattered their classroom. I knew at that moment my life had changed because I wanted to make sure that my children can get to school safely. And for too long, Ward 7 has been forgotten about. Many of us walk down the street, our community still look the same as it did when I was a child growing up there 30 years ago. And, you know, though our backgrounds may differ, many of us like you all have had the same experiences where we have communities that are forgotten about. I live in Ward 7. I know what it feels like to be forgotten about. I know what crime is high, right? My children, they lost their brother. He was shot over 25 times. And it's nothing more sad than having to go up to a casket with your children, hearing their concerns. So I want to go to the places where people need representation. And I know as an attorney, you cannot represent anyone if you do not know their issues and concerns. And one of the things I can promise you, if elected as your Ward 7 council member, is that I will show up for you, I will be present for you, I will be engaged for you, and I will be active. Thank you for having me here today, and I'm looking forward to engaging each and every one of you in the audience.
Ms. Denise Reed.
Good evening, everyone. You all look lovely out there. Thank you. Again, my name is Denise Reed. I'm a lifelong Ward 7 resident. I am the National Committee Woman for the DC Democratic Party. And also, I've had a long history of working with the City Council for 3 council chairmen, beginning with David Clark and Linda Kropp and Chairman Gray. And I was also Chief of Staff for Councilmember Kevin Chavis. But I'm also well aware of some of the challenges faced by the Latino community. I'm particularly concerned about construction workers that have been attacked and robbed. I really think that there should be more done to address the construction areas to make sure that they are safe. I want Latino families to have proper health care, education, training, and overall care that they deserve along with everyone else. Migrants they came here for a reason. They came here because they want to grow and to prosper. And we should be all interested in assisting them in doing that. And I am also a former member of the Human Rights Commission. So I have been exposed to a lot of the injustices that have occurred, particularly within the Latino community. So I look forward to being the next Ward 7 council member, and I look forward to your endorsement. Please feel free to contact me further if you would like to talk about my agenda. Thank you.
Ebony Rose Thompson.
Good evening. First, let me offer my apologies. I was late this evening because it is not only important for me to run for a next office, but to actually serve in the office I have well. I currently am the president of the DC State Board of Education. We do have a standing working session, which is every first Wednesday. And it is important for me to show up, to be consistent, and otherwise I would not have been late to this evening. But I did my best to do that. And then to come here, and fortunately work with a wonderful team on the State Board of Education to make that possible. My name is Ebony Rose Thompson, if we have not met. I do represent, like I said, Ward 7 on the State Board of Education and serve as the president of the board. I am very proud to be from Ward 7 in every sense of the word. Not only is Ward 7 a community I moved back to after coming home from college, it's a community I grew up in. It's the community that my grandparents chose to live in. It's the community that I went to elementary school in. And it's not a place of last resort for me. Just as I know it's not a place of last resort for most of our residents. And as someone who believes in Ward 7, I know the same things that I want for myself and for my family are the same thing that Latino families want, that Black families want, that white families want. We want to be safe. We want to make sure we have safe and affordable and comfortable housing. We want pathways to education. We want careers. We want to be able to thrive in DC. My goal is never to pander. I know not everyone who is Latino is an immigrant. I know some of you all are first generation immigrants. And I know that what's important is for us to actually be inclusive, set a way forward together, but not only for us to stand up here and make promises, but to talk about what we have done. I can tell you that as an elected official on the state. Oh, I didn't know how much time I had. I'll wrap up in saying, I can tell you that as an official.
I'm sorry, you do have to wrap up your comments.
Okay.
I can't give you any more time with the rest of the
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. This is why you're never late.
We are going to give it a second chance because now we're going to take a question from the audience.
Oh, thank you.
Now we're going to take a question from the Carlos Rosario audience. A student will be asking a question of all the Ward 7 candidates, and we'll again go in the alphabetical order. You will have 1 minute to respond to the student. Can that student please step forward?
I'm sorry, guys. Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a question. My question is, I'm sorry. Public safety is a top priority for residents. What concrete measures will you implement to maintain a safe and secure environment in our area?
Excellent question. Yes, again, I'm Evan A. Allen. I'm running for Ward 7 DC Council. In 2011, I lost a young man by the name of Brian Murillo. He was the first young student, first homicide in Washington, D.C. in 2011. Public safety is very, very dear to me. And so I believe that we have to make sure we partner with the Metropolitan Police Department. Also, again, I want to bring a youth Latino task force because you guys be able to speak up. And I want to be able to have sessions with you guys so the youth will be able to talk and we can be engaged and come up with some resolutions for those scholars. I think that makes a difference. I think we need to have more relationships within our schools and also with our recreational centers as well. So I think that's very, very important. And so I'm dear and I'm dedicated because I lost Brian to gun violence in 2011. That's my answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. We know that the District of Columbia yesterday passed the second reading of the DC crime bill. We also know that in order for the District of Columbia to provide safety and security for us, that we have to have a working number. That 4,300 number of DC officers to maintain safety and security on that street must be kept. It must be met and it must be maintained. We also have to send resources to prevention and intervention opportunities that can segregate those who need a second chance and those who need to be redirected from a pathway that could lead them down a path of crime. And then those who are out here robbing and stealing and killing and harming us need to go to jail. And we need to understand the difference of giving second chances, but we also need to understand that if you harm and hurt a human being in the District of Columbia, you have to have a consequence. We cannot.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So we are at a historic low number of police officers due to a number of retirements. And as a result of the pandemic, we also have low morale in our police force. So we need to focus on recruiting quality candidates who know and understand our communities. I would like to see an emphasis put on candidates of color who come from DC and who really understand our youth. I see a big need to fix chronic truancy rates in schools. We have to get our kids back into school so that they're not exposed to the worst elements of society. And we also need to hold people accountable for their actions. Whether that's someone who's under the age of 18, we can't keep sending the message that just because they're a minor that they're not going to face any consequences. It doesn't mean that you lock someone up who's young for the rest of their lives, but community service or just something that sends them the message that when you commit a crime, you're going to face consequences. Thank you.
Yes. So I worked in DC Superior Court for nearly a decade in our criminal justice system. And I had the opportunity to work for our first elected Attorney General, Cole Racine. So I know that it's time for more solutions and more investments in what we know does work. And what we know what does work is swift and certain accountability for violent offenses. What we do know is that we need more police, but we know that police cannot do it alone. So we know that we have programs such as Violence Interrupters, which I was very supportive of, Cure the Streets, which we have in Ward 7. It's a data-driven program, and we've seen the effects of it. We've seen it in Benton Terrace, we've seen it in Benton Park, we've seen it in Clay Terrace, we've seen it in Lincoln Heights. And our young kids need help. And I know this because I had a child at a young age. I had my first child when I was 19 years old. And we cannot forget about our young people. We cannot leave them by the wayside. So they need more programs like College Bound, which Commissioner Evan A. Island did at Howard University. We need more programming at our rec centers. Thank you.
Denise Reed.
So yes, we do need more police officers, but we need resources. We need family resources, we need education resources. There are a lot of resources available that families don't know about. We need to reach out to them before some crimes are committed. We also need accountability, more accountability, family accountability, parent accountability. And I really think that is key, especially with juveniles. And I just retired from CSOSA, so I have a little bit of knowledge about that. And I would really like to implement some programs that would help families. I think that's the key. The resources for the families would help a whole lot in changing the way things are happening in our communities. Thank you.
Bernie Rose Thompson.
I think one big thing a council member can do is making sure we are fully funding our cadet program. As our city continues to diversify, we need to have diverse officers who are part of our communities, policing our communities. That is one way to keep us safe. A second thing we need to do is make sure the responsiveness and the responsibility around public safety is intentional and accessible when people have language barriers. I know the quality of response I sometimes get differs from that of my neighbors. And that is something we have to clean up. And as a council member doing the oversight to make sure MPD is responsible to all of our communities and responsible for all of our communities is very important. The last thing I would say is almost most important, that we are also reminding folks that we are a sanctuary city. And so we do not want folks hesitating to report if they are victims of crime or if they are witnessing crime, because we can only work with the knowledge we have. And so those things are really important for a council member to do. Thank you.
That concludes the Ward 7 part of our program. And so at this time, candidates, you're free to leave if you wish. I'm sure you have other events to get to tonight, or you can stay. That's your choice. Okay. Now we will move on to the Ward 8 race, and we have two candidates present tonight. Salim Adolfo.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Salim Adolfo, candidate for the Ward 8 member of the Council of the District of Columbia. I am the best candidate to represent Latinos, immigrant, and non-citizens community because I know and understand what it's like to not be represented. You know, you come to a place where people may not be able to understand where you're from, your background, so then you have to make relationships. I've had the experience of working with the Mayor's Office on African Affairs, and one of the things I learned was that there is a language barrier. There is a cultural barrier that many of our people face that live here right in the city, and oftentimes can't get the services they need because they just simply can't communicate with other people in the community. So I want to be somebody who can help people learn how to communicate with others, close that gap, and make people feel welcome. Ward 8 is home to a lot of people from a lot of places across the country, but a lot of places across the world. And once we can get people to understand and feel welcome, then we can start to build some of those bridges that are lacking in our community. And I'm someone who can do that. Thank you.
Robin Branch.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rahman Branch, and I am candidate for Ward 8 City Council.
I can talk a lot about all the different things that we all feel are similar needs in our community, whether it's public safety, whether it's education, whether it's economic opportunity and building of entrepreneurship and mom and pops. But what I haven't heard any of us talk about today is the necessity of building trust. One of the things that I've done as a lifelong educator and the director of the Mayor's Office on African American Affairs is make sure that we extend a level of care and service to communities, because that's how you build trust. I think about students who are having run-ins with the law, and because they were being treated as if they were an immigrant and didn't have advocacy or support, getting in touch with families, getting in touch with parents, and making sure that we were able to de-escalate situations, recognize the genius of a young man who was in school in an ESL class, but pretty much managed a home where he translated things for parents, where he took care of other siblings, made sure his siblings got to school and got home on time, and made sure that the family was a part of DC. That's the trust we had to extend to that young man when he needed service and support from us. As a candidate, one of the first things I do to make sure we build that trust is have representation from the Latino, non-citizen, and/or immigrant communities in my office, because that's one way to make sure those needs are reflected directly in the work that we do as legislators. Thank you for my time.
We're now going to take a question from a student for the Ward 8 candidate.
Good evening, everyone. My question is, can you tell us how you would want to improve access to healthcare in the district if you were elected?
Thank you. So as a council member, you're just not the council member of the ward, you're the council member for the entire city. And I think that healthcare is something that we know we all need access to. In Ward 8 particularly, but across the city, I think that there are huge gaps in getting people who are immigrants, who don't speak English, and who are not citizens into those spaces. So for me, making sure that we can do a couple of things. Getting information put in various languages so that people can read, because the city has a lot of resources, but sometimes we're not able to connect those resources to people. So we have to crush that language barrier. And we have a hospital coming into Ward 8, and as a commissioner, I'm someone who's helped facilitate that process. So making sure that we can have the actual medical resources that are in our community that we need.
So, excellent question, thank you for it. I think it's important to make sure that we're doing the work that we have to do around navigating our systems a bit better. As someone who went into entrepreneurship and had to access healthcare myself as an individual, the wait time is ridiculous, the response is very challenging, and ultimately I know as a person who's trying to receive it myself, that there has to be a greater level of accountability on agencies who are providing services. There's an abundance of resource in what we always talk about in a $20 billion government. And I want to make sure that we take the resources that are there and prepare people to be a better service, and to make sure that people have the skills to access the communities that we're serving, and not so much the other way around, where we always are talking about residents who need to learn how to communicate with us. We have to make sure our services are built to be a better service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. That concludes the Ward 8 portion of this program. And now we're going to move on to Ward 4. Janice Lewis George. Okay, she's not present. Ms. Lewis George, oh, is she here? I see her in the back. Ms. Lewis George is the incumbent, which means that she is the current council member. And she had a public function this evening, so we thank you for joining us, and you can come right up to the podium because it's your turn. So you will have 2 minutes, and the question is, why are you the best candidate for immigrants, Latinos, and non-citizens in your race?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janice Lewis George. I'm the proud Ward 4 council member. And first I want to say I'm happy to be back here. I was just here in December. Happy 50th anniversary to Carlos Rosario. I had the opportunity to have a full 5-course meal from their culinary program, and every bite was delicious. So Thank you to the students who served, to the chefs. It was amazing. For me, I have been focused. I'm proud to be the ward council member with the largest Latino population in the city. And I have been focused on making sure three things: improving economic opportunity for our Latino community. And I've done that through three ways. First, earned income tax credit, the first thing I passed when I got on the council. That was to put money in the hands of families. We were able to give $25 to $250 in families' pockets every month to improve economic outcomes for families. The second thing I did when I got on the council, raise the wages for early childhood educators. That's right. We were able to give 4,000 early childhood educators, predominantly Black and brown women, a raise that they deserved. Black and brown women have always historically not gotten the wages for the work that we have done, and I fought to make sure raises were increased for them. When I look at economic opportunity, my grandmother served in homes. She was a cook, she was a cleaner in homes right here in DC. And so having a domestic workers' bill of rights was so important for me so that our families could have a dignity and do the work they do with dignity. She raised 13 grandkids as a house cleaner, cleaning houses here in DC. And the mayor said to me, we had a budget session, and she said, Councilmember, I said, Mayor, you didn't fund for domestic workers' bill of rights. She said, well, the budget is yours, you do it. And guess what I did? I absolutely did it. We funded domestic workers' bill of rights. We made sure it was implemented to the Attorney General's office. And so for me, when it comes to Latino community, I put my money where my mouth is, from giving money to excluded workers to making sure we had the SNAP benefits. If you want a fighter, I am your fighter, and I will continue to be a fighter for the Latino community every day. Thank you.
And Ms. Lewis George will give another round of questions after the other candidates have gone as well. Lisa Gore.
Buenas noches. ¿Cómo estamos? Bien? Sí. Mi nombre es Lisa Gore, and I'm a candidate for the Ward 4 City Council seat. I came with a prepared speech, but I do what I normally do, and I speak from the heart. I cannot say how pleased I am to be here with you all tonight. I started my career in Washington, D.C. as a juvenile bilingual probation officer with D.C. Superior Court. And I started that position. If some of you all have been here long enough, you know the history of Washington, D.C., the history of the Latino community, the issues that happened in the riots with police and the interaction. And from that, the city started hiring bilinguals in the government. I'm a product of that. I was one of the first bilinguals hired in D.C. Superior Court for juvenile supervision. I work with families, I work with the kids and youth to make sure they have access to systems that they need, education, mental health services. When I was serving kids in Washington, D.C. and D.C. Superior Court that were on probation for committing a crime, my kids did not even have access to a Spanish-speaking counselor. They did not have access to a Spanish-speaking psychologist. I fought for that, and I worked my butt off and brought and served to make sure that I contracted and got them the services they need in the language they need. So language access is a huge issue for me. I'm also a 27-year veteran of federal law enforcement, so I know the issues that immigrant communities have with public safety. That is an issue for me, and I'm also a daughter of a contractor. My husband was my father, was a construction guy. He owned his own business. He made us a good life by doing construction. So vocational education and pairing that up for community members is really important to me. I also believe in representation. I will have my contact information for you. If you have any questions, you'll be able to give me a call and I'll speak to you directly.
Mr. Paul Johnson.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. Buenos días. Buenas noches. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to be here tonight. As I said, my name is Paul Johnson. I'm a Ward 4 resident.
I'm standing to run for office to represent Ward 4 on the DC Council because I care so much about the district and about Ward 4 and about our beloved diverse community and residents in Ward 4. I'm deeply rooted in the community and work to have connections in the community and to engage and to listen to what's happening amongst residents. And that's evidenced by being a chair of ANC 4C and also being a Democratic committeeman to the DC Dems, also being on the executive committee of the 4th District Metropolitan Police District. It's also evidence in my personal life. My wife and I have a first grader who's a 7-year-old who's at DC bilingual. I was a leader on the Parent-Teacher Association because it's important to me. And all of those wonderful, splendid teachers, Spanish teachers, English teachers that represent the mosaic of the school taught my daughter, and I appreciate them for that. It's also evidenced by my professional experience. I've worked abroad. I've worked in multinational, I've worked in settings with colleagues that are multinationals with multiple languages speaking. I'm very comfortable in those environments. I speak Portuguese and some Spanish as well, even if I don't know the time of the day. And all those things I bring to bear that are reflective of our community and reflective in decision-making and policy. Thank you. Appreciate being here. Take care.
We're now going to take a question from the student audience for the Ward 4 Council candidates.
Good evening. My question is, what policy would you support to promote affordable housing options in the neighborhood?
Councilmember Louis George.
Thank you.
1 minute.
Thank you. I just introduced legislation a couple months ago, which was do right by our tenants. Why? Because tenants in our Brightwood community in Ward 4 have faced landlords who have used immigration status to bully, have used language access as a means to bully, and have not made sure that our people were living in habitable, safe housing. When they did that, I first went to the Attorney General office, which I am a former Attorney General. We were actually able to file a lawsuit. We filed a lawsuit because of the mistreatment of our Latino tenants who were living in the Brightwood community. We fought, we won that lawsuit. And just this month, our tenants have been collecting on the payments of rent that they paid while they were living in those safe, unsafe, habitable conditions. In addition to that, do right by tenants means that landlords who continue to be slumlords in this city will no longer be able to keep buying up properties and doing the same action against tenants in our city. They cannot look at the cost of doing business is to just pay the fines off. If you're not going to do right by our tenants, we want housing providers, but if you're not going to do right, we don't want you here. So that's where I am, and that's what I think. Thank you.
Mr. Gore.
Thank you for your question. So in my previous position, not only was I in law enforcement, but I was in an agency that oversaw the Department of Housing and Urban Development. One of the things that's in my background is affordable housing. One of the things I would do is make sure we continue to invest in the Housing Production Trust Fund, which is the major fund to afford affordable housing in DC. I am also a big advocate for our public housing communities. We have a huge waiting list in the District of Columbia. We always have had a bad waiting list here, and we are really behind on housing authority repairs, making sure our units are habitable and those units are decent, safe, and sanitary. That's a big issue. In addition to that, working with development teams, I'm chair of ANC 34G. Our community right now is undergoing affordable housing development in the Chevy Chase Civic Core. If you guys are familiar with the wards in the city, you know Ward 3, and I split Ward 3 and 4 in my ANC, is one of the worst wards for developing affordable housing in the city. So that's what I would do to promote affordable housing. Thank you.
I just want to provide a clarifying comment. You hear the term ANC often. Those are advisory neighborhood commissioners. It's a very neighborhood level councils that exist to represent residents directly. So I just wanted to inform you of that question. All right, thank you. Mr. Paul Johnson.
Thank you for the clarification. I think it's a mixture of things. I think you have to have oversight. I think you have to have vision. I think you have to use your position of power to make the right decisions on zoning matters, and you have to be in touch with the community. So I've been the chair of ANC, which is responsible for weighing in on zoning matters. And on Georgia Avenue, Ward 4, on issues of publicly owned assets and property, and that notice is given out to the community and decisions are made in the right way. I've worked with Council Member White on making sure that the firehouse publicly owned assets are properly surplus and disposed of, and that development is done equitably and in a transparent way. I would also say working with community groups like that work on the comprehensive plan to make sure that they're racially equitable, that there's family-sized apartment units. These are things you have to do to make sure that there's affordability and fairness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidates, please don't go anywhere because you're going to get another question, but I did want to indicate to the people who are standing in the back, we do have several seats. We have about 4 over here and 2 over here. So if you feel like sitting, please come forward, don't hesitate. Under the rules of the forum, I'm allowed to ask a question as well, and I'm going to do this, so please don't go. Since the incumbent council member is one of the 3 candidates, I thought it appropriate to ask a question about legislation that passed the council yesterday, which was the Secure Act, with regards to the criminal issue and the crime issues that are impacting our city. And so I would like to ask the candidates to please respond with 1 minute. We're going to ask you basically the same question that was asked of the Ward 7 candidates. So public safety is a top priority for residents. What concrete measures do you champion to maintain a safe and secure environment in our city?
Thank you.
Councilmember Lewis Ward.
Thank you. As you know, I'm actually the only former prosecutor on the council. I'm the only person who's ever had to prosecute, unfortunately, really harmful cases here in the district, from armed carjackings to robberies. Also have been a victim of crime many times myself. And so as a prosecutor, someone who studied law and also practiced law here in the district as well as in Philadelphia, for me, you have to have 3 things. You gotta have prevention work. Prevention works like whole families, whole things, like making sure SNAP benefits are there, making sure people have stable housing, making sure people have fair wages and stable incomes. You gotta do the intervention work. I believe in violence interruption because I've seen it work. I believe in restorative justice. I believe in conflict resolution, which is why I passed legislation to bring conflict resolution in our schools, which is why I've actually done ceasefires in our ward between crews like Kennedy Street and Riggs and brought them together to cease fire in our community. That intervention work is needed and is necessary. And then you gotta do the enforcement work. That's making sure our law enforcement is making the arrests, making constitutionally lawful arrests, and that's making sure our prosecutors are prosecuting cases. If you can do the prevention, the intervention, and enforcement, we will be a safer city, and I believe we will get there. Thank you.
Lisa Ward.
So this definitely is not a 1 minute question. And as I said, I'm retired federal law enforcement, 27 years. So if elected, I would be the only person on the council with actual law enforcement experience. My lens is always going to be through the lens of victims. It's always going to be through the lens of making sure that people are safe at every cost. We want a system that is transparent. We want a system that is fair. But we want people in this city to be safe. We want businesses to be secure, and we have to continue to make sure that happens. I'm glad Secure DC passed yesterday. There were some amendments in it that I thought should not pass, but we will deal with that. And in addition, I think that we need to continue to strengthen NPD. We need a workforce that's capable of doing the job and keeping us safe. Prevention is in the middle of the sentence. Prevention comes when our kids get adjudicated. I want prevention to come before they even get there. I have a son, I raised him in DC public schools, and I know that their help sometimes comes too late. So I do believe we need to switch to make sure those services come on the front end. Thank you.
Just a note, I would ask the candidates to please respect the timekeeper so that we can keep our forum on time. Mr. Paul Johnson, you have 1 minute.
I think the most important thing is messaging. I think we need the highest elected leader in Ward 4 to stand up and say that, yes, in fact, it needs to be accountability. It needs to be 360 degrees of accountability. Parents, the community, law enforcement need to be accountable, and some behaviors are not acceptable. And when I talk to my constituents, that's the feedback that I'm getting and hearing from residents. When I'm talking to construction workers who've worked hard for a day's pay, to be assaulted and their pay taken from them, that's not right. So there needs to be accountability for that. I think in terms of the police force, it needs to be right-sized. I think we're understaffed. I think that needs to be stated, and policies need to be supported for that to happen. I think that we need to work together to solve problems and not do the blame game. We're all vested in a safe ward, and we need to work together with stakeholders to do so. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ward 4 candidates for answering the questions, and so that will conclude our portion of the Ward 4 program. And candidates are free to stay. Councilmember Lewis George probably have another meeting to get to, so it's up to you, whatever you would like to do. We're now going to move on to the council at large. Council at large represents the entire city, so we will begin with Rodney Red Grant.
Housing is unaffordable. Education is not equitable. And crime is out of control. We've heard it over and over and over again. We're all going to say it. But we need to speak about the 15% of Latino students who are not doing well in school. 85% of Latino students who are not doing well in school, and 15% who are reading on grade level. So we took 100 students in here, and we put 15 over here, and we took 85 and put over here. Those 85 are not doing well in school. That's not going to fly. And it's partly because we don't have the right teachers that's teaching our students, our Latino students. They don't have language barrier. They don't know the culture, and that is affecting the students themselves. For 7 years, the last 7 years, this has been happening. And a lot of people in office right now are sitting in the council looking at IG, playing around. And we need to get real people in those seats that care about this community, that care about our people. And if we don't, we will have a severe problem. My name is Rodney Ray Grant. I'm a DC Washingtonian native. I graduated from Dunbar Senior High School, went to Savannah State and played football with Shannon Sharp, and I was very good. And, you know, my mother raised me properly. She raised me to clean up the streets, our street, not just in front of my home, but in front of the whole street, everybody's home. That's the type of parent I come from.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Your time is expired.
So I want you guys to understand, that's why
Thank you.
I'm the best candidate for at-large council. Thank you so much.
Mr. Robert White. Mr. White is the incumbent council member who sits currently in the at-large council seat. Mr. White, and just for the benefit of the individuals who come recently, the question we're asking all of our candidates is, why are you the best candidate for immigrants, Latinos, and non-citizens in your race? Councilmember White, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you for having me. Huge thanks to Carlos Rosario leadership, to the students, to the DC Latino Caucus for providing this forum. I'm at-large council member Robert White. I'm a 5th generation Washingtonian. I'm a husband and father of 2 little girls. And what I know is that most of us, whether we're recent immigrants, forced immigrants, or our families moved here years ago, most of us want the same things. We want our families to be safe. Safety means accountability and prevention. That's why on the council, I focused on both of those issues, accountability, fixing a 911 system so you get an answer and we can hold people accountable, making sure we have enough people collecting evidence so that we can hold people accountable, turning around the prosecution rate so that we can hold people accountable, but also recognizing that we are a better city if we prevent the violence in the first place. Last week, I proposed a series of bills to do a massive expansion of vocational education so that our students in 10th grade, 11th grade can see their way to a $70,000, $80,000 career just after graduation. I created a program that I introduced last week with a major expansion of mentors for young people who are telling us they don't have enough guidance, by allowing DC government professionals to go into our schools across the city and focusing on truancy, because that's the first indication that our young people are going off the wrong track. We also want housing. That's why I've worked day and night over the past year to completely reform the DC Housing Authority, from their board to their leadership to their funding structure and definitely to their oversight. We all want good education. That's why I worked with Councilmember Vincent Gray to pass and write the most expansive early childhood education bill in our country, and we passed that bill. But beyond that, we're in a city that is seeing migrants bust into our city, and we have a responsibility to make sure they can do for their families the same things the rest of us want to do. That's why I visit the migrant shelters and talk to people about what they need and then act on it. What I kept hearing from people is, we want to work. So I wrote to the Biden administration to make sure they can do that. I'm asking for your support for another term on the DC Council. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Councilman. We're now going to take a question from the audience, and I will also have a question after that. So for the student, come on up.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My question is, what are your plans to support the immigrant community living in this district?
What are the plans to support? I didn't hear the last part. I'm so sorry.
What are your plans to support the immigrant community living in the district?
Okay, thank you so much. Great question. Well, first we gotta deal with rent control. You know, rent is out of control in Washington, DC, and it's directly affecting our immigrants. You know, they need to be able to afford housing here when they come. We got to make that an issue that's important, because when they get off from Texas and they sending them up to Kamala Harris's house, and where do they go? After they come out, they get into housing, they need a place to go. So I want to make sure we deal with the housing situation. And we also got to deal with the TPS situation. And another thing, a lot of people don't know, my immigrant brothers and sisters, you know, we're passionate about our communities. When you guys get here, you're just like us. Y'all want to be a part of the community. So we want to make sure that you are a part of this community in open arms and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember White.
Thank you for that question. To help the immigrant community, the first thing we need to do is understand the humanity in all people. Again, most of us want the same things. We want affordable housing, a place that we can live. That's why I'm working to reform public housing, so that we can unlock that 1/4 of public housing units that are closed down. That's why I fight tooth and nail to expand affordable housing so that you and I and our families can have a place to live. We also want good education for our kids, because all of us want our kids to be able to do better than we've done. That's why I work to close the education gap in our schools, because it is absolutely unacceptable and it has been tolerated by the mayor, but it has to be intolerable. But for folks who have come here and are not citizens yet, the most important right in the democracy, the way you change things, is with the right to vote. That's why I'm a co-introducer of the Non-Citizen Voting Rights Act bill that passed and allows everybody in our city to vote. That's also why I expand democracy to make DC the first jurisdiction in the nation to allow all incarcerated people to vote. What you want for yourself and your family is the same thing that I want for me and mine, and that's why I fight so hard. Thank you.
I will also ask a question. Councilmember White mentioned the migrant buses that are currently coming to DC. And of course, we want to be welcoming to individuals who have come here after traversing deathly conditions over thousands of miles, fleeing persecution in their home countries. But at the same time, we have to recognize the strain on city resources. What is your long-term plan for addressing the migrant individuals that are arriving in the district to make sure that they are treated in the most humane way possible? We'll start with Mr. Grant.
Thank you.
1 minute.
Great question. Well, my background is humanitarian. I'm a humanitarian first and foremost. Most people think that I come from a comedy background, but I come from a humanitarian background. So 85% of my life, I believe that people should be treated like humans. In our city right now, a lot of people are not being treated like humans. So I want to make sure the legislation that I put in place is making sure that everybody is being treated fairly, like a human being. Because it's a shame we put people in office and they don't see these situations happening. They look around and see a blind eye to the space. So I want to make sure that the humanity of life is there. And I want to make sure they have safe places to go. I want to make sure that it's clean where they go. I want to make sure that if they're sending people to hotels on New York Avenue, these are livable spaces, not just places where they're just throwing people there. So I just want to bring humanitarian, a sense of humanitarian back to you.
Councilmember White.
The first time I went to the Days Inn to talk to folks who have been bused here, many of them against their will, I asked a guy why he came. He said he came for his daughter, and that struck me in a very personal way. So what I will do for immigrants coming here, particularly folks who are being bused here, is first work to stabilize with shelter and services. The second thing I'm actively doing right now is making the Office of Migrant Services permanent to ensure that we have permanent services for migrants coming to our city, and I think they can serve a broader role. The third thing is to make sure people coming into our city can get into our social service programs the way everybody else does, so that the programs can catch them without building resentment of people and saying, hey, how are people jumping in line? But overarching all of that, I'm working to make sure that our human services programs work and are funded. If you track my work, particularly over the past 6-9 months, every time the mayor has tried to cut our human services program, I've pulled the council together, I've fought back, and I have won. And we're going to keep winning.
All right. That concludes the at-large council portion of the program, and that also concludes the council portion of the program. Now, those are all of the local races that non-citizens are able to vote for. We're now going to move to races where non-citizens cannot vote in. They are federal offices. However, we encourage you to stick around and listen, because one day we're going to have statehood, and these individuals, they will be our first congresspersons who represent the District of Columbia, or New Columbia, or whatever we end up being called. So, Douglas Commonwealth, there you go, thank you. And so it's important to hear from them, but also it's important to hear why statehood is directly relevant to Latinos, immigrants, and non-citizens. So in the spirit of that, I invite you to stick around and listen to what they have to say. We're going to start with the U.S. Senator for D.C. Shadow, Franklin Garcia.
Buenas noches. Let's see if we can get this right. When I say DC, you say statehood. DC. DC. Very good. So we're not just campaigning, right? We're promoting statehood. So my name is Franklin Garcia. Let me quickly recognize the grandstanding residents of our city, Jay Halleck and Hector Torres, who have helped so many in our community. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And of course, I must recognize Ted Losa, whose vision to get us a pact is really what got us to DC Latino Caucus. Thank you so much, Ted. Anyways, so my name is Franklin Garcia, and you know, I've been in DC since 1981, and I thought that how nice it was to live in Washington, D.C., a city that was close to all this influence and all these famous people and all these politicians. As I grew up, I realized that the divide between that but that I envisioned, and the city that I call home was huge. And so when I got elected in 2014 as your U.S. Shadow Representative, I went on the Hill and I noticed that Congresswoman Norton was great at getting the entire Black caucus on board every time she introduced her statehood bill. But she was lacking a lot of our folks, the Latino members of Congress. And so I created a structure to visit, these are non-paid positions incidentally, but they require really almost full-time commitment. And so I created a structure to get a statehood. What I did is I went to visit, I have a very good employer that supports my job incidentally, that supports the work I did. And so I had gone to visit members of Congress 3 times a week, and I got on their face and I told them, this is what we're doing and this is what we need. And it actually worked. I did that and I combined that with a media campaign that reached across the entire city and beyond. I then helped organize a bunch of the groups here, a coalition, because statehood is not about anybody. Congresswoman Norton is wonderful, but she's not going to be able to get statehood without everybody. So thank you so much. Again, my name is Franklin Garcia.
I would note Mr. Garcia is also one of the founders of the DC Latino Caucus and currently sits on our board. I'm sorry, Reverend Martina Hamilton, sorry.
Thank you. That's right. Well, good evening. I try again. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's so good to be here. Thank you, DC Latino Caucus, for this opportunity to address everyone. And thank you, students of Carlos Rosario International School. Wow, what a great program you all have going on here. Can we spread that citywide? Can we get a couple more campuses? We need a few east of the river. Hello. My name is Reverend Wendy Hamilton, and it is an honor to be before you and share a little bit about myself and why I believe I'm the best candidate in this race to become your next DC Shadow Senator. The Shadow Senator role, for those of you who may not know, is the ambassador for statehood to Congress. If you know about Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton, anyone familiar with that name? Yes. I hope so. She does a wonderful, tireless job of fighting for statehood in the House. The Shadow Senator is like the, on the Senate side, we'd be doing similar work, just in terms of advocating for DC statehood. We advocate, we build relationships, and we garner support for statehood locally and nationally to bolster our chances of achieving it eventually, and we will. It's a meaningful role. Now, why do I believe I'm the best candidate for the Latino, immigrant, and non-citizen community? Because I believe that whether it's concerns about lack of resources, housing, equitable opportunities, or representation across the board, I know that DC can do a much better job in providing tangible benefits to the Latino community, not just the lip service that they are currently providing. My day job is in DC public schools, where I work with Latino, immigrant, and non-citizen families every single day. Some of those students that have come on the bus have come to my school. I listen to their concerns. I provide educational support and services however I can. I'll be a senator who is visible in the community, who listens and prioritizes actions over words. Thank you.
Andrew.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Hingsworth, and I am a DC native running to be your next U.S. Shadow Senator. The reason why I am the best for this position is because I know and love this city. Growing up in this city, going to DC public schools, I was a classmate with students that had parents that were TPX, whether that was from El Salvador, Venezuela, Eritrea, or Ethiopia. I understand and grew up with them and understand what it means to be in this city and not have a voice. That is why we push for statehood, because really they take away our voice. Someone mentioned earlier about how someone works all day and have an honest day job, and then someone takes that money from a crime and robbery. Without DC having statehood, that is what happens every single day with our tax dollars. They take our money, and then we have no say in how we can control our budgets in the city, how we control our laws in the city, and how we can control our bodies. As someone, again, who grew up in this city, I can relate what is being treated as a non-citizen. And again, you're being taxed, and they're being told how you can live. And so I will fight to make sure that justice is truly served in this city. We are in the roaring 20s. We started this decade off with the pandemic, but we shall be in an era of expansion, an expansion of rights, and an expansion of the union. DC deserves statehood, and so does every immigrant, every Latino, and every community that joins this city. We want the United States to be great, and we need to push for it. And I believe pushing for DC statehood, making us the 51st state, and to honor Frederick Douglass, an abolitionist, to make us Douglass Commonwealth is truly important. There are many issues that will impact us, but if you do not have a vote or a voice at the table, they will disregard you. And again, continue to take our money, to act like we have no resources. Thank you for your time and your input.
Ankit Jain. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ankit Jain. I am a voting rights attorney with Fair Vote and a former Sierra Club attorney, environmental attorney, and I am the son of immigrants who spent many years in this country as non-citizens. My dad had to sleep in line overnight outside his local immigration office to get his green card and get on the pathway to a vote. I don't take the right to vote for granted, and that's why I'm running for shadow senator to achieve statehood for the people of DC and our large Latino and immigrant population. I know what it's like to grow up and live as an immigrant in this country and in this city. And beyond my personal experiences, I will advocate for policies that uplift the Latino community. I want to mention just 3 of those tonight. First of all, I believe that we deserve a US senator who fundamentally believes in the importance of non-citizens having the right to vote and who will work tenaciously and effectively to protect that right from congressional interference. Second of all, I want to make sure that we end the shameful failure in our city to elect a single Latino or first or second generation immigrant to our council. I will work to expand DC's legislative assembly after we achieve statehood, or our DC council before we achieve statehood, and potentially paired with an electoral reform known as proportional representation to ensure that minority communities like the Latino community have a seat share in their DC council that equals their vote share. And finally, I want to make sure that we build more affordable housing in this city so that the Latino community and all Washingtonians can afford their rent and their home costs. Thank you very much, and I hope I can earn your vote.
We will now take a question from a student in the audience for the US Senator Shadow candidates.
Good evening. What social justice issues are you most passionate about? And how would you plan to work on these issues as a shadow senator?
Franklin Garcia.
Thank you. What was the question? You were saying what is my most passionate justice?
Just repeat the whole question.
Yeah.
Okay. What social justice issues are you most passionate about? And how would you plan to work on these issues as a shadow senator?
It is definitely statehood, and it's an issue that it affects everybody equally here, not just immigrants, everybody. And I started outlining how I'm going to do it. I'm going to make sure that it is a structured job, that I'm committed to visiting members of the Senate constantly. I'm going to build up on this social network that we need to get information out so that everybody in the entire world knows what's going on in the District of Columbia. And then I'm going to make sure that we deliver that by engaging different houses in different states, because ultimately statehood won't happen by the citizens of Washington, D.C. We need to reach beyond our borders and make sure that we have the support we need beyond. And so I plan to do that, exactly that. Thank you so much for the question.
Thank you for that question. And social justice issues are a passion of mine. I am someone who likes to represent those who feel like they have no voice, those who feel like they have no power. And what I would do in this particular role as shadow senator is I would take that voice to the halls of power and create access opportunities so that we all feel like we have a fair shot in Washington, D.C. And not having statehood impacts us all, like you've heard tonight. It is not fair that we are paying more taxes than 33 other states. It is not fair that we have more population than Wyoming and Vermont, and yet we have no representation. Taxation without representation is what this country was founded upon. And so as your shadow senator, that would be my first priority, is to make sure that fairness is instilled across the city for everyone. I would raise my voice. I'm not a politician, I'm a mama. I'm an abuela. I'm a fighter. And what I do is make sure that if I see injustice anywhere, it's a threat to justice everywhere, like Dr. King said. And that's what I would use my role as shadow senator to fight against.
Andrew Haynes.
Thank you again for the question. And really, definitely after 2022, we live in a post-Dobbs world. That is the social justice issue that is a 5-alarm fire across this nation. I mean, we also have a corrupt Supreme Court, but that of not having full access and control of our bodies is a national issue, and that is something we need to join in. Like other folks have said, DC will never gain statehood by ourselves through our own will. We need to go out to the nation and join that movement and understand that fighting for control of your bodies means also fighting for statehood, so that we can be part of that national conversation that an individual that can become pregnant has full access to all healthcare. And again, that is something that every community in Arizona, Oklahoma, Ohio can join us, because we cannot do this fight alone. And that's what I believe is truly important in this moment. Statehood will help with that, pushing for that. Thank you again, Andrew Hainsworth, for U.S. Shadow Senator.
Well, for me, the answer has to be voting rights. You know, I'm a voting rights attorney. I'm running for this position because it's an outgrowth of everything that I've done up to now and everything I believe in. Representation, it's so important for our rights, and not just in an abstract way, in a very specific way. We talk about abortion. What would we be looking at if DC had statehood and 2 US senators? Would we have seen a Supreme Court that was willing to overrule Roe v. Wade? Would we have a Congress that's unwilling to do anything to protect women's right to choose? When you don't have the right to vote, you don't have any rights in any areas, and you can be overlooked and overturned and looked down upon. So it has to be voting rights. That's how we get our rights here in DC. And it's important to care about this issue, but it's important to be someone who can actually move the ball forward. You know, I worked in legislative advocacy at the Sierra Club. I'm working in legislative advocacy at Fair Vote, advancing bills and regulations forward. I have the experience on how we're going to actually get it done. I've seen bills become law and not become law, and I have a plan and a vision to make it happen.
Thank you. That concludes the race for shadow senator. We will now move on to the second to last. That is U.S. delegate Kelly Williams. Again, for those who just entered recently, the question is, why are you the best candidate for immigrants, Latinos, and non-citizens in your race?
Good evening. My name is Kelly Michael Williams. I am the best candidate for the Latino and immigrant population because I bring to the table life experiences. I was homeless in this city with my 3-year-old son. And when I went to go look for social services, there was nothing available for single fathers. I couldn't find a shelter. I couldn't find housing. All I could find was food stamps, but I had no refrigerator to put it in. What I understand is that when a lot of immigrants have come to DC, they are homeless and they have been sheltered around and pushed around to different places. Unfortunately, they have not always been given the stability that they need. I didn't have that stability either. But what I have had is the experience to understand what you had to go through. And what I'm gonna bring to the table and what I will do in Congress, make sure that stability in housing, stability for single fathers, stability for single mothers and families in general will be secured through our operations, through my legislation, through my ability to appropriate dollars as a congressional member, through my ability to go to HUD and advocate on your behalf. I have 3 programs right now that I'm doing for high school diploma individuals, Latinos, African Americans. One is drones. I'm using drones to help you become air traffic controllers, $80,000 to $90,000 a year job. I'm using stenography or court reporting. And I'm also doing cybersecurity. So what I'm looking to do is to make sure that even if you don't have a college education, when you get to the District of Columbia, you're gonna have housing. You're gonna have opportunity for a job once you graduate from Carlos Rosario. And you'll be able to make a living in this city and be able to have yourself and build yourself a family and stability that most times you were not able to do so otherwise. Thank you.
All right, so we will now take a question from the audience, from a student.
Good evening, everyone. My question is, what do you think are the most important qualities in an effective leader?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Okay, my question is, what do you think are the most important qualities of an effective leader?
The most important qualities of an effective leader?
Yes.
Listening. Listening to the people. We are your servants. We don't serve for ourselves. So when you come to my office and you address or come to me with an issue, it's my responsibility, it's my duty, it's my oath of office to listen to your issue and to make sure that I address that issue sufficiently and practically for your satisfaction. If I'm not able to do that, then I have to find a way to do that. And I have to find a coalition of people to help me do that, because I can't be a one-man show. That's why there's 435 congressional members in Congress. So I have to be able to work with my congressional members, then work with my shadow senator, and then also work with my senators on the other side to be able to do that. Because if I don't listen to you, and if I just give you lip service, like a lot of our candidates tonight have talked about individuals giving you, then I'm not being effective. I have to be able to listen to you and be able to satisfy your issue. How much time I got left? Kelly Michael Williams, Kelly Michael for DC. Go to my website. And let me remind you, I'm the only candidate that has my website in Spanish. So go to my website.
Thank you. Lastly, we're going to move to U.S. Representative for DC Shadow, and that's Oye Olin.
Thank you so much. Save the best for last, right? All right, good evening. My name is Dr. Oye Olin. I'm a child of immigrants, I'm a healthcare worker, and I'm your current U.S. representative. And before I talk about the things that I do, I want to talk a little bit about me, right? I'm a child of African immigrants from a little known country called Nigeria. And my parents gave me a couple of things, right? They gave me an African first name, an African last name, so I couldn't hide. A sense of professionalism, but also the need to give back, immigrant values. And that's what I bring to this role as U.S. representative, where we fight for DC statehood. And we already mentioned why statehood is important. But in addition to that, I bring those values to this office, right? We not only fight for DC statehood in other cities, but we also do things here in DC to better the quality of life. Like number one, for the past 12 years as a pharmacist, I volunteered in elementary schools to get kids interested in science. So kids that look like us can actually afford to live in DC for 10, 15 years here. We've helped returning citizens get their records cleared so they can get on the pathway to a safe life and improve in our communities. We also are teaching minority business owners, immigrant business owners, how to get contracts, grants, certifications, because people from our background often think we do it by ourselves, right? The 80,000 plus Latinos live in this city, making $61,000 per year on average, the highest in the country, which is good, but here not good enough. But most importantly, to answer the question, why I am the best candidate for the immigrant community, Latinx community, is because this office, what I'm doing is the blueprint. They say folks from our background can't get elected, can't do good for the community, can't look out for us first. In this office, we've been able to do so. We've also been able to help candidates from our backgrounds run for office and win.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
All right, thank you.
And we're going to take our last question from the audience.
Good evening, candidates. So my question is, what is the top 3 areas of focus you would like work on as the U.S. Shadow Representative?
Thank you. I guess that's a question what I'm going to continue to do. It's really important to empower people to be the best that they can be, not the best I think they can be. You know, a lot of it comes from economic opportunities, but not just say it, but be a part of it. Let's talk numbers. About 20% of businesses, small businesses, are owned by minorities, but less than 2% get contracts federally. That's billions of dollars that our people, whether what race you are not getting. That's how we transform our communities. That's how we hire people from our own backgrounds. That's how we go from employees to employers. Whether the capital stay or go, we need to make sure that we're rebuilding DC with our faces in it, with our business in it, with money coming to us, because that's what we deserve here in the district.
Thank you. I do want to note, I forgot to indicate at the start that Mr. Owolowo is currently serving in the role of U.S. Representative and is looking for a second term.
Yes, my third term.
Third term, okay. All right, we're now going to move to the closing part of our agenda. I wanted to provide just a couple of last comments and then we'll close. First of all, I want to thank the candidates who are here tonight. Every single one of you showed up, took time out of your busy schedule. Thank you. I know that the audience appreciates your being here. I do want to specifically thank the incumbents that are currently here, council members Louis George and Robert White, Mr. Owolowo, and State Board of Education President, Ms. Ebony Rose Thompson, because you are public servants. We know you often work late into the night and also appreciate your being here. For folks in the audience, to me, it's just so incredibly exciting to have seen these candidates essentially asking for your support. It's the first time here in DC, but it will not be the last. But we will continue to organize, we will continue to engage with our local government to make sure that Latino, immigrant, and non-citizen voices are heard. Now we're going to have some closing remarks from the Carlos Rosario principal, Sonia Gutierrez campus, where we're here tonight with Ms. Alani Lawrence. And then after that, we will close the forum, and it's going to be a closed session for DC Latino Caucus members only to have a deliberating session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here this evening. As Joe expressed, my name is Alani Lawrence, and I am the very proud principal of the Sonia Gutierrez campus of Carlos Rosario School. I come to work every single day with an immense smile because I get to do what I love every single day, which is to work in service of our amazing students. Can we please give a round of applause for our amazing students? Our students know, and everyone who's here knows, that I'm a very proud native Washingtonian, and that I welcome all of our students to our city and encourage them to fall in love with DC just as much as I have over all of these years. Thank you to the candidates for being here this evening to hear directly from some of your constituents who will now have an opportunity to vote for you. We are just beginning to start our education campaign to support our students to learn more about this new right that they have, and so that they are informed voters when they head to the polls. So thank you for being a big part of that. I have to thank my incredible team. Look at how beautiful they made our cafeteria look for this event tonight, and to support our students to get ready to be here. We started out this school year and we said that this was going to be the best year ever, right? Everybody here knows we wear our buttons. We know this is the best year ever. Why? We're celebrating 50 years of Carlos Rosario. We're celebrating our new voting rights for all of our DC residents. And we are here bettering ourselves, getting our education, and becoming, like I said, informed voters here in the district. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for the DC Latino Caucus to work together to make this event so amazing. You are going to continue to hear from all of the people in this room. And just know, those of you who said, contact me with your questions, our students will. Okay? Thank you so much. Everyone, thank you so much. It's been incredible.
So at this time, we will ask DC Latino Caucus members to stay for closed session. Candidates, thank you very much for attending tonight. Students, please thank you also for attending. If you're a member, good standing, you're welcome to stay. You can all leave.